Well, ladies and gentlemen, in this video, I am going to be going through every single state and giving a percent chance, maybe a range in terms of the odds on Donald Trump winning all of these states. Obviously, a lot of these states, there's going to be a 0% chance. Some of them, there might be a 10 to 15%. And then all the swing states are all going to be somewhere in the middle. So people do ask me a lot when they super chat me. They say, what are your thoughts on X state? What are the chances in this? So I figured I would just go through all of them and give a percent chance in terms of every single state. And we're going to go starting with Washington. So Washington, 0% chance. Being realistic, it's just not going to happen. Oregon, 0% chance. I understand people are talking about the early vote in Oregon. You got a few polls. They just haven't done many polls there. I think Oregon's going to get slightly closer, but in terms of Trump winning it, again, that's what we're going by, 0% chance. California, 0% chance. It will get closer, but Trump's obviously not going to win the state. Hawaii, at this point, 0% chance. Obviously, Alaska, 100% chance. Alaska will be one to watch. Preferably, Alaska doesn't really matter, and Trump has already wrapped up the election, and you know, when it finally gets called, whenever that is, because obviously the polls close really late relative to the East Coast and Alaska. But 10 to 12 points. I know he only won it by 10 points in 2020, and it kind of took him a while to call it. But I would say maybe he pushes up to 12 or 13 with a more favorable environment. Montana, 100% chance. Idaho, 100% chance. Wyoming, 100% chance. Northern South Dakota, both 100% chance. You've got the districts in Nebraska. So the 3rd district is 100% chance. Nebraska at large is 100% chance. The 1st district is 100% chance. The 2nd district, I'll just do that right now, I think is I would say maybe a 10% chance Trump wins the 2nd district. I understand that it's a district that he won in 2016. He lost it in 2020. Maybe you would think with a more favorable environment, he'd flip it in 2024. It's just not looking likely. The only reason I don't say it's like a 1% chance is because there's limited polling, but the polls that we've seen there have not been positive. I mean, it's like a 10 or 11 point lead for Harris. It's just a more liberal area, Omaha, and that it's kind of like a gerrymandered state. So is Maine. It's like both candidates are going to get one of those districts, which is fine. But there was the idea that Republicans were trying to push Nebraska to be winner take all and just 5 electoral votes overall, but that didn't happen. And that's going to help the Democrats flip one of those electoral votes, the same thing that they did in 2020 with Biden. When it comes to Nevada right now, I would say it's going to be a very close state. Right now, I would say about 58 to a 60% chance for Trump right now in Nevada. That would be, you could argue maybe a little bit more. You could argue 65-35 based on early vote, but it's somewhere in the range like 58 to 65, something like that. I would say like 60 if I had to settle on a number in Nevada. Obviously, it is a swing state. It is 6 electoral votes, so that's what I would say there. Arizona is another one. I would say probably around 70 to 80. I'd say like 78 to 80% right now. Maybe 80% for Arizona. It's looking very good in Arizona. The polls are great. Arizona and Georgia are very similar, but I would say right now Trump's chances are around 80%. You've even got some of the very liberal people who predict Harris to win basically every swing state. The one state they never predict Harris to win at this point is Arizona. I think they've kind of given up Arizona. So I would say like 80, and that's even me being conservative. You could argue like 85% chance at this point. The betting even has it as like 76% chance for Trump when it comes to that. Utah obviously is 100% chance. Colorado is a 0% chance. I know there's been some decent early voting. It's just not going to happen in Colorado. The state's turned too liberal over the past few cycles with people moving in from California. And Colorado is going to be at least a 10-point margin, I would imagine there. New Mexico, I would say 10% chance, maybe. There's limited polling out of New Mexico. Trump did take a trip there, so people kind of perked up. He went to Albuquerque, like 3 days ago, 4 days ago, whatever it was on Halloween. But obviously their internal polls probably said they were down by 3 or 4, which is close. But all of the public polls that we've seen show it to be, it's about a 5 or 6 point lead for Harris right now. It is a border state. There is narrative there that potentially with the demographics, Trump could shift it a little bit, but I'm guessing it'd be like I'd say a 10% chance right now Trump wins New Mexico when looking at that. Texas is thankfully going to be a 100% chance. The liberals have been trying to flip Texas. It's just not going to happen. And the goal here for Trump would be about a 7 or an 8 point victory, which would be really, really good considering the population shifts in Texas. Texas getting supposedly more liberal since the pandemic and people moving in, making Austin kind of a blue city, really blue city that is. But all of that's happening and Trump's shifting it to the right because the last 3 or 4 cycles we've seen Texas get closer and closer and closer to the point where it was within 6 points in 2020. Well, now Trump's potentially winning by around 8 or 9 points or at least 7.5. But obviously in just terms of winning the state, there's a 100% chance. Oklahoma, I saw Oklahoma early voting. It was like Republicans plus 35 or something, or 40, I don't know. Obviously, Trump's going to win Oklahoma. I think Republicans win every county in Oklahoma as well. Kansas, yeah, so there was a poll in Kansas that was kind of reminds me of the Iowa poll. Maybe it's not as bad, but there was a poll in Kansas a few days ago that was Trump only +5. And I would imagine Trump wins the state by at least 10. There's a narrative right now, specifically, it really hasn't been about Iowa, but there's liberals that they get perked up over Kansas and Missouri possibly becoming more blue. And I'm not saying they think they're going to flip them, but they're saying eventually. So I could see Kansas swinging a little bit more, just getting liberal. It's not necessarily a Trump thing. It's just the state's getting more liberal. So the margin might be a little bit closer, but Trump's got a 100% chance to win Kansas. We know that. Louisiana, 100% chance. Arkansas, 100% chance. Mississippi, 100% chance. Alabama, 100% chance. Tennessee, 100% chance. Missouri, 100% chance. Iowa, a few days ago, it would be 100% chance. No, I'm still going to say 100% chance for Iowa. We know about the poll. Very accurate, historically accurate Seltzer poll came out. The gold standard in Iowa, certainly they've been very good, but they're going to be really, really wrong this cycle. It just is what it is. It's just an outlier of all outliers. It's got Harris up 3. There's been 2 other Iowa polls that have been released. One of them was Trump +8. The other was Trump +10. One of the pollsters was Emerson. I think SoCal was the other one, but Iowa it's definitely going to go to Trump. I mean, it just, when you look at Iowa and you tether it to a Wisconsin, to even a Minnesota, the polls in Minnesota have been similar to what the Iowa poll with Seltzer with Harris +3 was. Minnesota polls have been like +4, +5. It's just the idea that Iowa would be that liberal. It's not going to happen. And so for Iowa, I would say, if you want to say 99% chance because that poll historically has been really accurate, okay. But for me, I see no way that Harris is going to win Iowa in terms of that. When it comes to Illinois, obviously Trump has a 0% chance to win Illinois. It might be slightly closer. When it comes to Minnesota, Minnesota is similar to New Mexico. I would say there's a very slight more of a chance in Minnesota than New Mexico. I would say maybe about 10 to 15% chance in Minnesota. The polls have been, they've been, to me, slightly better than New Mexico, but still you're talking about like a 4 or 5 point difference there in Minnesota, and there's really not a Republican narrative in that state like there would be in a Virginia. So that's kind of the difference in my opinion, between Minnesota and Virginia. And also Trump didn't even travel to Minnesota, so I'm guessing their internals are not that great. He chose New Mexico over Minnesota when Minnesota had more electoral votes. Tells me maybe maybe I should have New Mexico at a higher chance than Minnesota, but either way, they're both around 10% chance at this point. They are both kind of long shots for Trump. Kentucky, 100% chance. Indiana, 100% chance. Ohio, 100% chance. The margin in Ohio will be very interesting. You'd like to get around at least a 10 or an 11 point win, minimum 8 or 9 to make sure Moreno wins. But I think it's going to be, we've seen some really solid polls here the past 2 days about Ohio possibly being a double-digit win for Trump, which would really coincide with what we've seen across the nation. When you talk about Trump winning the state by 8 points, you would figure he's probably going to perform a few points better than that, because in 2020 there was more of a negative environment for Trump based off of his approval, based off of the pandemic. It was terrible timing. Things are a lot better now from just a national perspective. So I think Ohio, certainly 100% chance Trump is going to win the state. Very, very nice to say that, considering, this was a swing state in 2020 and 2016. People forget that, but not in 2024. Very similar thing with Florida. Florida is going to be a Trump victory. Republicans are crushing Democrats in terms of early voting. And I think it's probably going to be, you could be looking at a double-digit win there in Florida. It'll be interesting. If Trump's able to get a 10 or 11 point win in Florida and Ohio, it really is remarkable, but I think Trump wins both of those states, 100% chance, guaranteed, no doubt. When it comes to Georgia, you can argue, based off of the polls, it's the most Republican state right now out of all the swing states. But I would probably put it around the same odds as Arizona, as in like 78 to an 80% chance right now. It's right on the edge of being a real safe state for Trump. The polls are amazing in Georgia, and they've got a gold standard pollster that has Trump up by 4. They've been off by less than a point the past 2 cycles, both cycles with Trump, by the way. So they've accurately polled Trump both times. The polls in Florida are normally accurate. In 2020, they were within a point, if I remember correctly, and they actually underestimated Trump. Now the aggregates got Trump up 2.5, and basically every poll outside of the New York Times one has Trump winning, most of them by at least 2 to 3 points. So Georgia looks really, really good. That's why I'd say about 78 to an 80% chance in Georgia. South Carolina is a 100% chance. North Carolina, you could argue, is very similar to Georgia and Arizona. The polls in North Carolina to me are a little bit more squirrely than Arizona and Georgia. I would probably say 75%. I'd bring it down a little bit. I do feel a bit more confident in Georgia and Arizona than North Carolina. Now, people will disagree with me on that because Trump has won Georgia in both 2016 and 2020. He lost Georgia, or he's won North Carolina in both 2016 and 2020. He lost Georgia in 2020, but it was only by 0.3. It was a ridiculous effort. There was so much minority vote. It seems like the minority vote is not turning out in early voting. So I think there's really bullish signs out of Georgia. And then Arizona, he barely lost in 2020 as well. He obviously won North Carolina both years, both cycles. So you could maybe say North Carolina is safer, but I do think North Carolina is getting a little bit more liberal. But the question is, will that make up for Trump performing better across the board this year? He won North Carolina by 1.3. Yes, the state might be getting slightly more liberal, but Trump's going to perform better anyways. So I think Trump wins North Carolina by around 2 or 3, and I would say 80% chance for Georgia, Arizona, 75% chance for North Carolina. When you're talking about Virginia, so Virginia is one where, you could argue it's within 3 or 4 points. Possibly, there was an internal poll that came out where Trump was down by 2. I would say right now, a solid 20% chance to win. There's a puncher's chance. It's not likely. 80-20, 80% for Harris, 20% for Trump in Virginia. That's what I would say. I really can't put it any higher, but that's what I would say for that. When you're talking about West Virginia, you're talking about 100% chance there. When you're talking about the Rust Belt, so I would say all of these states, obviously very close. I do have Trump winning all of them, and I would make Trump a favorite in all of these states. Pennsylvania would be, to me, around 65% to 35% in favor of Trump. Michigan would probably be around 55% for Trump, and Wisconsin would probably be around 60% for Trump. Now, that's just a relative range based off of kind of the general narrative, with Pennsylvania being the state that is furthest to the right in terms of this election for Trump, Wisconsin being in the middle, Michigan being the most liberal state. It does align with the polls. Now, the polls could be wrong because these states are very, very close in terms of the margins. You could see Wisconsin being the state that Trump performs the best in. But right now, I do feel pretty confident about Pennsylvania, around 65, possibly even 70% chance for Trump. I do think Trump's going to win that state. And I think he's also going to win Michigan and Wisconsin, but I do think those states are going to be closer. That's why it's reflective in my overall odds on those states. When it comes to New York, there's a 0% chance. I know Republicans got excited with the rally there at Madison Square Garden. Really cool moment there. It's not going to happen. You would like to see about a 12 or a 13-point loss in New York, because that'd be mean where Trump would make up around 10 points in the state from 2020 alone, which would be a really, really impressive thing. When you're talking about that Maine at large, I would say I would give Trump, there's just no polling. I would give him like a 10% chance to win Maine at large. I don't think it's going to happen, honestly. When you're talking about the first district, there's a 0% chance. The second district, I would say it's about a 90% chance Trump wins the second district. You could argue 100%. There's not a lot of polling there, but Trump, he won. That's a Republican district that he won, back in 2020. And I think he's probably going to win it by about 5 or 6 points, if I had to guess, at least in terms of that one. New Hampshire, I would probably say very similar to Virginia, around a 20% chance. The polls in you could argue maybe a 25% chance just because the polls in New Hampshire have been better. The issue with New Hampshire is I have heard a lot of the independent people that live there do not like Trump. And that happens sometimes with, a state with a lower population, many independents. It is what it is. I don't think it's going to happen in New Hampshire based off of what I heard. But, it's possible. You're getting polls that are around tie. Maybe, my guess is Trump will narrowly lose the state by like 2 or 3 points, honestly. People will be surprised at how close it is, but he'll lose the state when it comes to that. Vermont, 0% chance. Connecticut, 0% chance. New Jersey, 0% chance. People will watch New Jersey. There's some positive early voting in New Jersey. There's been a narrative there, but it's going to be at least a 9 or a 10-point loss. Delaware, 0% chance. Maryland, 0% chance. DC, 0% chance. Rhode Island, 0% chance. Massachusetts, 0% chance. So that would be my basic odds on every single state in terms of Trump's chances. Arizona and Georgia, I would put almost around 80% at this point. North Carolina would be a little bit lower at like 75. Nevada, to me, you're looking at like 60-ish there. Pennsylvania, you're looking at like 60 to 70 or 65 to 70. And then Wisconsin, Michigan closer, with Michigan possibly being the closest in terms of overall margin. To me, it's either going to be Michigan or Nevada in terms of margin, but obviously Michigan's going to get talked about way more because of the electoral votes being significantly more. And then the two states that I would look for Trump to potentially flip if you're able to expand the map, it would be a Virginia or a New Hampshire, I think, over a New Mexico or a Minnesota. And both of those, I'd say around a 20% chance with those states there. Michigan and New Mexico would be around a 10% chance with those states when looking at that. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Links to that's always in the description.